Okay, so this is my presentation on my vulnerable population, and it is I put obesity, but it's the super obese. How do I click this? Okay. So yeah, so my vulnerable population is the super obese. Um, which is the definition of super obese is a BMI of 50 and over. This population is vulnerable because they can be greatly discriminated against in healthcare. A lot of healthcare, like a lot of health issues, can be passed off as a result of their weight. A lot of doctors can be like, oh, this, and this is happening because you're overweight. You need to lose weight, which can be dangerous. It also it ups their healthcare costs greatly more than someone who might not be obese because they do tend to have a lot more health issues that they need to go be seen for, which can definitely up their bill a lot. In the US, there's about 50,000 super obese people. The obesity rate, not super obese, but just regular obesity rate, is 31.9%. I had a really hard time finding the rates for super obese. It was mostly just obesity. So, and then Utah is 28.6%, which was their that was also the obesity rate, not super obese. It's more prevalent in minorities and people with lower incomes, and so because Utah is so predominantly white, that is why the obesity rates are a little bit lower in Utah than in the in the U.S. There's also because of the culture is so predominantly Mormon. That means that some there are certain rules that they have which like there's no alcohol drinking, which can definitely lower alcohol. Overconsumption of alcohol can lead to gaining weight a little bit easier. Alcohol is definitely something that makes it a little bit easier to gain weight, and then other things like just trying to eat healthy is what a lot of the Mormons like to do. So that definitely lowers the obesity rate for Utah. So I thought the social determinant that I chose was healthcare access and quality. This is definitely a social determinant that impacts the obese because, like I said, the obese are more likely to have doctor's visits. They're more likely to have surgeries. They definitely have more visits that are specifically related to orthopedics, and they have a lot of orthopedic care. So that definitely ups their bills, ups their healthcare bills. So that their healthcare bills are higher than your average citizen. Those higher bills can definitely negatively affect, I mean, anybody, but especially, the obese. It can also be harder to find specifically transport for these doctor's appointments. Sometimes those super obese, they need the specialty vans, they need wheelchair ramps, they need more oxygen at home, or I mean, even those wheelchair ramps at home, different like railings, shower chairs, things like that aren't accessible at every clinic or office, and they cost money to be placed in their home. So that definitely can be hard on them. When I decided on a root cause, I decided low incomes because not only can low income affect their healthcare access and quality, but also um, it can be a little bit harder to eat healthy foods when you have low income. You don't necessarily have money for the food that you need or want. They definitely can, I would say, eat out more. It can definitely seem cheaper, to get a Wendy's 4 for $4 than to buy all the fresh ingredients for a meal at home. So that definitely, those low incomes definitely directly affects obesity. As far as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I mean, you start off at the bottom, physiological, I would say unmet, because the root cause of the super obese can be that water and food. Well, maybe not necessarily water, but the food aspect definitely can be hard. If they can't afford the healthy foods that they want, that definitely just kind of shakes the whole bottom of the pyramid. I would say, typically, not that I've noticed shelter um, or sleep can be a problem. I guess sleep could be a problem with the heavier some people get, the more sleep apnea they have. That can definitely affect sleeping, but I would say mostly food for this is focus. Why it's unmet. Safety, it could be unmet. The super obese definitely is like a, you can't guarantee that everyone is either met or unmet. It's definitely different for everybody, but I would say it wouldn't more likely to be unmet as far as safety. Definitely less employment security. I feel like they are definitely discriminated against in the employee realm. Less body security for sure. They definitely probably don't feel as secure in their body. And then lower health and morality, of course. Definitely lower health with all the problems that can happen being super obese. Love and belonging, again, it's kind of personal up to the person, but I would definitely say if they are have that less body security and less and lower health and morality from safety, then that would definitely lead into that love and belonging. Can definitely have a harder time with intimacy and keeping friends. Esteem, definitely, I would say probably unmet. There's definitely going to be less self esteem in that super obese realm, especially with our society and how we seem to praise people for the skinnier that they are, and the more we praise them. So esteem would definitely, I say, has is more likely to be unmet. And then self-actualization, again, different for everyone. I would say it can kind of be unmet because I feel like those super obese can definitely can be discouraged as far as desiring to become the most that one can be. I feel as though that would be a harder one to meet. Overall, the anticipated functional level is lower for super obesity. The fact that their needs are most likely unmet on the lowest level of the pyramid can lead to further problems the higher you go. It's kind of like a domino effect, definitely affects it up as you go. If one's unmet, then most likely the next one's not going to be met either. You need a strong base to function on those higher levels. This means the health outcomes are also expected to be lower. The functional level and the health outcomes are linear, I would say. Uh, your health outcomes are going to be lower if your functional level is lower. So, there is a higher risk for communicable diseases. The super obese, usually their immune system has a harder time keeping up. So, those respiratory illnesses are definitely easier to catch. COVID rates, we've seen with the COVID numbers how it hits those obese people harder. It's definitely harder for them to recover. So, definitely a higher risk for those communicable diseases. There's also a higher risk for the non communicable diseases. Cancer, there's been some research into it. Cancer is a little bit of a hard one, but it definitely has been seen to kind of, I mean, it depends on the cancer, but definitely can affect the more obese. Diabetes is like the number one, like as far as non-communicable diseases, diabetes is like the one, like super high risk for those super obese, especially if they're not eating well, and are just sedimentary and just, I mean, diabetes, man, like type 2. I guess type 1 is different, but type 2 obviously is seen so directly in those higher obese people. So, and then heart disease. The more there's been correlations of the more obese you are, the greater it affects your blood pressure, and then that leads to the heart, your arteries, everything like that. That fatty tissue definitely is higher risk. There also are higher risk for self-care deficits. If your BMI is 50 or over, you're definitely going to have a hard time with some of those range of motions. You're not going to be able to reach some things. It's definitely harder to keep up with some of that self-care. You're also going to have that lower energy, so you can't reach places. You don't have the energy to try and keep reaching those places. It's totally higher risk for self-care. And then higher risk of being harmed by others. I feel like super obese are extremely discriminated against. Again, society, social media, the way it's used, definitely the more obese you are, the more you are discriminated against. especially on social media. And then again, that less range of motion has a little bit of a risk of being harmed by others. You kind of don't have that range of motion. But yeah. And then here are my references. That's it. Thank you.